How does that sound, Ate? I mean, Lucy?
Lucy.
It's okay.
Okay, so
At least they
topic
can
4
go
and
past
5.
final payment, then we go back to firing people.
Okay, so you want to go into final payment first?
Yes.
Okay. Does everybody not want to do the discussion on firing the workers?
That will come second. Well, actually, for me, I would like to know where we are on payment and when are we going to
Do a
get
final
paid.
payment review as topic 4 if everyone agrees to it, and then we can do a view up and figure out how we want to move forward from there. Because after we get into final payment, it might be hard to get back into the budget review, but we'll just see.
Okay, you can continue with the budget then. If
Well,
people
no,
are
it's fine. It's
approving
whatever
the
the group wants to do. What do y'all want to do?
budget.
Time to pause. Please stop. Close your eyes. Count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Open your eyes.
Yeah, I think you are right when we say if we skip this, it will be difficult for us to come back. Let's just get it done and then just go to the final payment. Because I think we should talk about it today.
Okay, so the proposal is topic 4, just at least getting started quickly with this policy on firing workers. And then topic 5 would be final payment review. All right, so does everyone have agreement on topic 4 and topic 5? We'll say 9 to 18 minutes on each.
No objection for me.
None.
All right, so topic 4 is reviewing this policy on making it easier to fire
Okay,
workers.
doing that, huh?
Okay, I'm doing the tab.
No, I said I'm doing the tab.
Oh, you said it? Okay.
Yeah, yes.
All right, so with this particular discussion, there has been interest in finding a new policy to make it easier to fire workers who are not performing. So basically, the criteria in question here is basically clear client work output, and we want clear internal operations output. So we want to find a fair, equitable process to make it easier for the organization to fire workers who are not performing to expectations, right? Also, we need to, all this also comes up with the priorities here. There's also a priority regarding, when this budget ends or next month budget deadline. So that is also a very important component that relates to this. So it's like we can think of this both like a fair and equitable process, both in relationship to budget agreement as well as just general individual workers,
Time
right?
to stretch. Please stop. Stand up and stretch and move around for 30 seconds.
Right. All right. So a couple of things that have been discussed is that, to create a process that is in essence like automatic or less personal, so that it's not based on someone disliking another worker or something like that, that it's really based on data and something based, a process that's based on data and verifiable information, right? Process based on output data and verifiable process. Verifiable information, right? So that people, because obviously if you go ahead and you propose, like, I propose to remove this person from the budget, it's very personal and people get very upset about it. Also, even with our elections processing or our proposal to remove people to the budget every month, that's very, very skewed, right? So our old process, if we think about our old process, that doesn't work, right? So our old process, which has never resulted in anyone ever getting fired, is simply once per month to vote on removals from the budget based on rankings, right? So it's really not functional. Because it's a little bit political, too political, etc. So maybe we try to do something different that's based more on data. For example, you could have, client work output or hours, right? Client work hours versus pay. And you could have internal, or you could have client work and internal ops, client work and internal ops hours versus pay. You could say that, 1 hour of client work is equal to 2 hours of internal ops. I don't know how you could equivalent them. I have no idea how to do that, put that separate. But anyways, the point is that if you had something based on pay, so if someone
Time to pause. Please stop. Close your eyes. Count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Open your eyes.
So someone with a very low budget, but very low work output, they should be fine, right? But if someone has high budget and low work output, should be a problem, right? So it can't just be on work output. It needs to be on work output in relationship to budget, because if you want a lot of money, you need to have a lot of work output. If you don't want money, you're like, basically, I'm fine with equity only, or I just want like $100 or whatever, and you're doing very little work, that's fine, because maybe it corresponds to your budget. Whereas if you want to get paid, $1,000 a month and you have very little work output, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And you would basically some sort of model for automatically getting someone removed. So one example could be example policy. So policy, for workers who have
Jay, can
high,
I say something?
yeah, let me just finish this. So the policy would just be based on, instead of getting consensus on removing someone from the budget, the organization would be required to get consensus on keeping someone in the budget if they don't meet minimum work output requirements. So that would be a significant change, where that if you automatically were removed from the budget for not meeting basic for your work output, we would require agreement to keep you in the budget, not to fire you. Okay, so that's an example. Okay.
Yes, Jay. I think this policy is going to continue to create chaos in this organization. The policy is very simple. If you don't do client work, whether you have $50 of budget or not, you are fired. That's the policy. You should make it in such a way that it will not affect us in the future. Because if for me, I can't vote on a budget on a proposal that says, if you have low budget, that doesn't mean anything. Someone can be like $150 and the person just stick around, turns around, attends main sessions, and then don't do any work. But at the end of the day, they might be having like 20, 50 hours of non output, Meanwhile, someone that has put in is going to drag down their pay. So if you are in the budget, you have to bring the income. If you are not bringing the income, you're fired. Period.
Ready. Now inhale.
What if
1,
they're
2, 3. Exhale. 1, 2, 3. Pause. Inhale together. 1, 2, 3. Exhale. Relax.
what if they are you know, volunteers or equity only or decision makers?
That should be a different thing. We are talking about workers, not volunteers or decision makers. I do not see that in the proposal. What that in that way we are saying. We are talking of workers that are in the budget. Are volunteers in the budget?
Paid workers who are in the upfront budget. Is that correct?
Yes, but are volunteers in the budget?
Yeah, well, they would be in the token budget or other things, or they would just be $0 in the budget. But if they're in the upfront budget, then it would be actual amount of money, right? So paid workers who are in the upfront budget. That would not be related to equity only volunteers or decision makers. It'd only be paid workers.
Yeah, we are talking of paid workers here. Whether you have maybe $100 or 150 of budget. If you don't produce any client work, you are fired. And we need to know how many percent. Is it 5% or is it 1% or is it 20 or is it 25% or is it 50% of client work? I think we have to know that equally. I don't know if that's equally taken into consideration.
Yes, that is the question. Is what would be the criteria? What would be the percentage, etc. There might be able to have an exemption for workers who have written agreement to swap client work for internal ops, then would be based on the swap to keep going. So again, the hardest part about this policy is the actual amount of client work required, or the percentage for the actual data of like how do you calculate this. I guess we could pass it
So
and then
I have a question, Jay. What happens if someone do most of his
Time to
or her
pause.
client work
Please stop.
than
Close your
internal
eyes.
op? Are you
Count.
still
1,
going to fire that
2,
person?
3, 4, 5. Open your eyes.
say again, Lucy.
I said, what happens if somebody do more in client work than internal ops? Is that person still need to be fired?
No.
I mean, I think what me and Ate are saying so far is that really it all comes down to client work. That internal ops is secondary to client work, right? So first you have to do client work, then you do internal operations, and then you do all your other communications and everything. So
Like there is also a question about client work. Like you said before, we have some client work that are not priorities. We had the priorities. I think for that it still affects people. Maybe you need to come up with something different. I don't know. Think of something.
Yeah, normally all client work is supposed to be a priority. All because we have to do all those client work in order to have that amount at the end of the month. So all client work is supposed to be priority.
I think client work is prioritized based on income potential. So if for some client work you can get $500, that would be a higher priority than client work that's only worth like $100.
Yeah, that's different now.
For me, like I don't
So
understand.
which simply means that If we are able to do all the client work that has much income, we can now continue to do the ones that have less income for the month, right?
Correct. That would be the priority. Yeah. But either way, that's not really applicable to this policy. This policy is in regards to the output. So another component of this output relates to um, especially new workers, right? So for new workers, we talked about policies within um, the other branches related to, like, you get, you know, minimum criteria met for new workers within the specified time period for automatic probation kind of thing. So it'd be like, um, within the first week, one week, this would be the expectations. Within the second week, this would be the
Time
expectation.
to take a break. Please stop. Write down whatever you were about to say and take a break for 6 minutes.
So basically, the idea is that, with a
Mm.
new worker, if they didn't meet the expectations, they could only be kept, right? The new worker can only be kept if consensus is reached on not firing them, right? So they would automatically get fired unless there was consensus on the probation and giving them an extra chance, right? And that would be the idea for the paid workers too. So, anyways, maybe for now we could start in a more simple way. Like we could just say, like, you know, workers are required to meet minimum expectation of, let's say, 10% client work output for their time. Otherwise, they automatically get fired unless the team comes to consensus on not firing them. So we know that there's 33% client work criteria. So we could say 10% minimum or you get fired as like a starting point. Anyways, shall we take a break?
Okay.
And you could also say like a 10% is automatic firing and then 20% is automatic probation or something like that. Like you get a warning at 20% or something like that. And then at 10%, you automatically get fired. So I don't know. And then for new workers, you give them a month or 2 months, but over each week or that they go through, they're expected to meet certain, like, for example, maybe by week 3, they have one responsibility, and maybe by week 2, they have one task. And week 1, they've completed, minimum uh, criteria for verification of main doc, top, and tax forms, etc. So maybe they're, organized position, etc. I don't know. So you could have key steps that if they don't have a clear responsibility by week 3, they're automatically fired. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
anyways, we don't need a vote on this now, but we're getting really closer. I'm glad we talked about this because I think it's coming together in terms of understanding what this policy might look like, at least for client work. So, should we take a quick 4 minute break and then we come back, or a 3 minute, 4 minute break, and then we come back and try to move forward on this?
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think we're done with the discussion. I think we're ready to just finalize the proposal, but maybe it'd be better to finalize the proposal as a buddy team and then go on to the final payment.
Yes.
Let's take a 3 minute break.
End
It's
of
4
break.
o'clock.
Time to start. Please get focused on the session.
I'm back.
Yeah, I'm back to.
I'm back.
All right. So the other thing we did not finalize was the deadline for creating a new budget. So as you know, in the client perspective, what happened where we had no budget for a month and then we had to use the previous budget. Basically, the 45-degree east budget was a nightmare and did not help the client in any way whatsoever. So the whole idea of giving an entire month for the team to do anything is pretty much insane in the perspective of the client. Right? So we need a little more clarity on the deadline for actually creating and updating a budget for the client to be continuing to pay money. So that we need to work out, but we can work that out later. So should we go on to the next topic, go on to topic 5? Or does anyone have any comments on when the deadline should be? I personally feel like the deadline should be the new moon, which is May 8th, and that's either we have a budget by May 8th, otherwise there's no pay. The budgets for the 95-degree west is over on May 8th and does not continue. No one gets paid without having agreement on a new budget. Anyways, we can discuss that more later though.
Maybe we can just do it.
We can what?
We can think about it, and for the new month for
Time to pause.
August.
Please
And for
stop.
this one, we know by 8,
Count 1, 2,
no,
3, 4, 5.
if there is
Open
still no
your
agreement on the budget, no payment. That's
Yeah,
clear.
I mean, that's what I think. It should just be very simple, that it's like we either get agreement on the budget or we don't. If we don't get agreement on the budget, we can try to have retroactive approval of the budget, backwards if we can get agreement. But if there's not agreement, then there's no pay. And then workers can choose to not do client work anymore, right? So come May 8th, it's like you're not in the budget anymore and there's no budget, you don't need to do client work, right? So it's in the best interest of the client to get agreement on the budget as well.
So Jay, I'll propose if there is no budget on the 8th, we should do a retroactive.
Yeah, but we can do retroactive later. There's no guarantee, but we could always do the retroactive to the 8th. So of course that would be the goal. But the point is that there should be no continuation of the 95-degree budget into the 130-degree moon month. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, Jay, I have the question. I tried to look on the budget process, but not see the budget policy. Where is the policy
For what?
for the budget?
Well, we have lots of budget policies, but what do you mean? What is the budget policy? Well, there's lots of policies.
I think there should be a policy in the budget, right?
For what? But what policy are you referring to?
For example, like when a budget, for example, right now we have approved the 95, is it 95 budget? Okay, where does it say in the policy that for the next month budget, someone that's not in the budget can reduce his his uh his budget to be added into the budget, his amount to so that he can increase his ranking, something like that.
I don't know if it necessarily changes your ranking because your ranking is based on your existing budget proposals, but it could increase your probability of the team supporting you and actually getting you into the budget, right?
Yes, that is when you're not in the budget. What they need to do is you propose a budget, you make a proposal, and then they add into the form proposal to add this worker into the budget. So I don't understand when you say people that are not in the budget, that are out of the budget, and in the
Time for
budget,
breath.
they
Please
reduce
stop.
their
Get
pay to
ready.
increase rank. I
Now
don't understand.
inhale.
It's just
One,
confusing.
2, 3. Exhale.
I
1,
wanted to see
2,
that policy.
3. Pause. Inhale together. 1, 2, 3. Exhale. Relax.
Well, the only way to increase your ranking, if you are not currently a worker, right? If you're currently a worker and you're in the budget, you can always reduce your pay and increase your ranking, right?
Good. When you're not in the budget, how does that affect? How
If
does
you're
that connect
not
to you?
if you're not in the budget, the only thing you can do, you only have two options. One, you could reduce your budget to try to get into the budget. So if that allows you to get into the budget, like let's say there's, under our new process, there might be like $300 left in the budget, but your budget's $400. So if you reduce your budget to $300 and get it approved as preemptive uh, change, then you could still
Okay.
get the budget. So that's one thing that could happen. Obviously, if people who are in the budget are willing to reduce their budget, it would make more space to add other people. But if you are not included in the budget, you have two options. You can either do like a fork or something, but you can actually end your budget, reduce your budget to $0. And if you go down to $0 and you only get equity, you can then like lower your ranking for a month or two and then increase your budget after that, and then you would have a higher ranking. Does that make sense?
Okay, Jay.
Yeah. So you can basically become a volunteer, or get equity only with tokens, and then be reducing your ranking or improving your ranking, and then re-propose yourself in the budget once your ranking meets the level needed based on your skills. Okay.
Okay, based on skills. Okay.
Yeah. But basically, because everybody's an owner, no one can be removed from the budget if they lower their budget amount and they're ranked high, right?
Yeah.
That is the policy. So as long as you're ranked high by lowering your budget amount or lowering and increasing your ranking, that includes lowering your budget to $0, at which case if you become a volunteer, you can't be fired. Okay?
Okay, Jay.
But I do agree with what you were saying, where it doesn't matter how much money that you want. If you're not doing work, it drags the whole team down. So even if you're a volunteer, even if you're equity only, and if you don't do any work and you're causing problems, you can still be removed, and you should still automatically be removed, because if you're here, you need to take it seriously. You need to be doing work.
Exactly.
Time to pause. Please stop. Close your eyes. Count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Open your eyes.
All right. So, anyways, do you want to try to finish this proposal, or do we want
Yeah,
to?
Jay. Let's just finish it and go to the payment. Let's just finish it. Let's just get this proposal because we need it.
Okay. So we want to try to finish it. So I think maybe we split it into two proposals. So proposal one would be paid workers who are in the upfront budget, not volunteers, equity decision makers, are required to meet a minimum of 10% client work. Does everyone like the idea of 10% client work? Do you think that's too little? Or do you like the idea of doing the the probation at 20% and automatic firing at 10%. Or maybe we could just start with something a little bit less. So we could say, what did I do? So let's say so details, we would say that 10% or less client work, the worker can only be saved with agreement, otherwise automatically fired. At 15% or less, 15% or less client work, the worker would be um, automatically put on probation. And then we have exemption for workers who get agreements and does a swap. And then at 50%, and then minimum criteria for new workers. Let's make that a separate proposal. So proposal for new workers are required to meet minimum expectations each week and month they are involved, giving them, I don't know, let's say 3 months before they are
Time to
required
stretch.
to meet
Please
the
stop. Stand up
client
and
work.
stretch and move around for 30 seconds.
So new workers get 3 months, which is in alignment with their other probation things, but they automatically get fired if they don't meet. Second month could be, 5 responsibilities. Third month, taking on entire process.
So Jay, I think this proposal on line 93 we should include indeed that this would take effect from the next month, not this 95 because we are already gone with this month.
Correct. Yes. So this would take effect. Let's say full moon of
10% or something.
130-degree moon. So we can evaluate this on the full moon.
10% or less.
All right. Anyways, we could just do voting proposal on both of these. We could vote on them now, but I think they're good enough to vote on the voting proposal. Then we just move on. But I think this is a pretty good start. They're not perfect, but it's a pretty good start, right?
Sure.
The percentages.
What?
I'm just asking Joyce and Lucy if they're okay with the percentages.
I have a question. This 10% is per person, per worker. You mean 10% of their proposed budget, proposed work hours budget? Like for example,
No, it's
20
10% of hours.
yeah, 20, for example, I have 20 hours, proposal is 20 hours, for example, a week. Okay. So 40, oh, no. 20, so 80 hours per month. So 10% of 80 hours?
Yeah. So like, let's say you're doing 15 hours per week, right?
Mm-hmm. So
5
10% of it.
hours per week must be client work, right? Which is
Ah,
33% is client work if to get paid, right?
yeah.
You get paid for all time, right? So if you're not doing 32% client work, you're not getting paid. But if you do 10% client work, you're automatically fired. So if you can't even do 1/3 of 1/3, you automatically get fired, which I think is really low.
Time to
10%.
pause. Please stop. Close your eyes. Count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Open your eyes.
10% is extremely low. And then for workers who are brand new, they get 3 months to meet the 10% expectation. I mean, this is really, really, really low. You know, so if people can't do this, they should be fired. That make sense?
Yeah.
But you should be doing at least 33%. 33% is the
Yes.
minimum to get paid. So even though we don't have to pay you, we don't fire you as long as you're doing 10%. But at 10%, you're not going to be getting full pay. There's just no way. Not under our new policy. Our new policies make it very clear if you want to get full pay, you need to be doing a minimum of 33%, if not more.
Yeah.
Lucy, any question, or are we okay with it?
No question. The things are allowed. We just learn things.
Exemption for workers who have written agreements to swap. What is this exemption for workers who have written agreements to swap client work or internal ops? Can you explain, Jay, line 96, please?
Next exemption. So we always say that, like, let's say you have two workers, worker A and worker B. Worker A says, I'm willing to double the amount of client work I do and do no internal operations, but worker B doubles the amount of internal operations that they do and they do no client work. So if worker A and worker B are willing to swap their 33% client work and internal operations, then worker A does 66% client work, whereas worker B does 66% internal operations. And then the two of them would be evaluated together. So if together they don't meet the 10% criteria for client work, then they would both get fired.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Exemption for workers evaluated together.
Does that make sense?
Written agreements when? Where? In the pub or what?
Sure, wherever. It just needs to be in writing. So as long as, like, if you find one other worker that you can get agreement to swap your client work and internal operations work
Time
with,
for breath. Please stop. Ready. Now inhale. 1, 2. Exhale. 1, 2, 3. Pause. Inhale together. 1, 2, 3. Exhale, relax.
and it also, I think this also needs to be approved by the team, you know, must be approved by the team as well. So for example, if you have one worker who makes a lot of money and really good at client work, and you have another worker who doesn't make as much money and is really good at internal operations, and they choose to swap the other way around. So they want to give the expensive worker who's good at client work, give them all the internal operations, and then give the less expensive worker who's good at internal operations all the client work. And so they basically make it all opposite of what's supposed to happen. The team can prevent that from happening.
Yeah, of course, because it doesn't make sense that someone that's good in client work.
Yeah. So if you're making more money per hour, you are required to do client work.
Okay.
So if you have one worker who's making $5 an hour and you have one worker who's making $10 an hour, the worker who's doing $10 an hour is required to do client work, and then they can swap their time with the worker who's making $5 an hour, but you can't do it the other way around. It would never work. Does that make sense?
I still don't understand the level of the swapping.
Even me.
What do you mean the level of the swapping? What do you mean you don't understand?
Okay, you said someone that has $10 an hour compared to someone that has $5. The one that has $10 should do more client work than and that person should prioritize. So how does the swapping goes on with someone that does not do only internal operation?
So if you both make the same amount of money, let's say you're both making $5 an hour, it doesn't matter. You can just switch those, like you say 10 hours one person, instead of doing 10 hours of client work, is going to do 10 hours swap to 20 hours of client work, and that would be worker A. And then you have worker B would be doing 10 hours swapped for 20 hours of internal operations, right? So worker A would only do client work, worker B would only do internal operations. You don't need to do all of it. You could just swap half of it. So you don't have to do all of it, but this is an example. And you could go either way. But if worker A is making $10 per hour and worker B is making $5 per hour, you can't swap the other direction, because let's say you're doing 10 hours of client work, that would be equated to, $50, right? Whereas worker A doing 10 hours of client work would be
100.
$100. So if worker A does 20 hours of client
Time
work,
to
that's
pause.
only worth
Please stop.
$100.
Close your eyes. Count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Open your eyes.
And then if worker B was doing 20 hours of client work, it would only bring in $100, but worker A would be required to pay $200 of internal ops value. So you just don't have enough money. Does that make sense?
200.
So it doesn't cover the cost of worker A, because you have to bring the money into the organization first, which is the client work. And it doesn't cover the cost of the client work if worker B does the client work and worker A does the internal operations. So the more money that you want to make, the less focused you should be on internal operations. That make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Better not swap. So confusing. No need.
Thank you.
Yes. It's not that confusing. Another example could be like, people who want to make 10, 20, $30 an hour. In the end, it doesn't matter, but the amount of tasks and work you can do, even client work, we can hire people to make $20 an hour if they only work on fundraising and they only work on grants and they only work on bringing in money, right? Because otherwise there's no way to pay them. So it's the same idea, right? So the more money you want, the amount of work that's available to you goes down. That makes sense? So basically, if we only want to pay people to only do fundraising, we can pay them more money. But then they wouldn't be able to do anything else. So it wouldn't be very helpful where we're at now. Eventually, in the future, we could hire people who literally only do fundraising, and they can increase their pay rate based on basically the fact that they bring the money into the organization. And then other people who are willing to take less money don't have to do the fundraising. Right?
Yeah.
Not to do the fundraising.
So there's 3 levels of value. There's direct income, which would be like fundraising and grants, et cetera, sales, right? Sales. Then you've got client work, which is indirect value after the actual fundraising. And then you have internal operations, and then you have communications. So communications would be like $0. There's no value in communications. Internal operations would be like low amount of money. Client work would be regular, and then direct income could be higher amount of money, right? Does that make sense?
Time to take a break. Please stop.
All right, anyways,
Write down whatever you were about to say and take a break for 6 minutes.
I think we're way over time here, so why don't we just get these
Yes.
into the voting form, and then let's go on to the next topic. Okay?
Yeah, let's get into voting form, yes.
All right, so we're taking a break, and when we come back, let's go into topic 5, okay?
Sure. Yeah, go to the next topic.
End it's of 4 o'clock. Time to start. Please get focused on the session.
But
All right, I'm back.
but
So topic
Back.
5. She's making fish right now. She's talking about it. So I can
Time to
copy and
pause.
paste what we did
Please stop.
before.
Close your eyes. Count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Open your eyes.
Copy and paste.
It's not
Copy and
totally done, but
paste.
at least it gives us something to talk about. So
Paste.
this was the work that me and Joyce did on Monday. And it's certainly not perfect, but it is at least a functional number. So for the 1 year total, we have $6,721. If you added the $1,275 for the back pay, that equals a grand total of $7,900. Basically $8,000. So maybe we should do like a round and hear from each person and see where they're at and what they think about it all. Hello, is anyone here?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Anyway, Jay, this is just estimate still, no? Still estimate.
No, these are actual calculations, but they're just not finalized. They're not verified. The final verification was not completed for the reconciliation yet, but we made a lot of
Mhm.
progress, I feel.
Yeah.
So what is remaining now? The final verification for reconciliation?
Final verification
Um,
for reconciliation.
yeah, I mean, there's also the Umcus. I mean, there's plenty of steps to go, but the question is, would people be willing to agree to this, right? Like that's the main question. Like if everybody feels like these numbers seem correct and that everyone would agree to it, then basically the probability we wouldn't approve it and finalize it is very low.
Time for breath. Please
But if
stop
people
and
feel
get
like these
ready.
numbers are
Now
not correct and
inhale.
are going to
1,
want way more
2,
back pay
3.
or something,
Exhale. 1, 2, 3. Pause. Inhale together. 1, 2, 3. Exhale, relax.
like if you wanted a bunch of back pay or something, then that would need to be worked out.
Fifty-eight, 51, 32. And does it will it affect Jay if we like you said we have to check also the minimum wage? Will the amounts affect?
Sure, yeah, the amounts could definitely be affected.
Because we did not do yet the minimum wage. We did not verify or something.
Jay, what's this total 1 year I'm seeing here?
That is the total for all of the payments added together, but it's not done yet because we still need to subtract some of the pay that people have already received. But yes, that is the total.
That is all the months ate from From 117 up to April, what's that? 45.
Does this amount include the one that we deducted for the back pay? For example, I had 350.
No, that would be separate. That's the 1,275, which is line 28.
20.
So I don't understand what you mean by deduct.
To deduct, the only thing that really needs to be deducted is the actual already received payments.
Which payment is
The
that?
ones we received from the
So
back
for the
payment.
reconciliation, it adds up, currently it adds up to $3,640.